Students, today I am going to discuss with you a few important questions from the chapter from the story The Summer of the Beautiful White Horse, snapshot book or class 11th. The student, let's start the question and answer. The first question is, why is the narrator moved when he begins the story The Summer of the Beautiful White Horse? When the narrator begins the story, he is in mood of nostalgia. That means he remembering someone. He was then 9 years old. The world seemed to him full of every kind of splendor that he could imagine. Life appeared to him a delightful and mysterious dream. Okay, student, now next question. What was the narrator's immediate reaction when he saw his cousin Murad sitting on a beautiful white horse? When the narrator saw his cousin Murad sitting on a beautiful white horse, he could not believe it. He rubbed his eyes to make sure that he was not dreaming. Next question. This was the part that wouldn't permit me to believe what I saw. What part does the narrator hint at? Answer. The narrator refers to their poverty. They had no money. They lived in extreme poverty, and it was difficult to understand how they got food to satisfy their hunger. He frankly admits that every branch of the Garogalanian family was living in the most amazing and comical poverty in the world. Next question. Which tribe did Aram belongs to? What was the image of his tribe? Aram belonged to the Garogalanian tribe who were the natives of Armenia. This tribe was once rich and prosperous and had their lands, but due to war or some other reason, they had to flee from their homeland and settled in Assyria, where they lived in poverty. This tribe was famous for their trust and honesty. They believed in right and wrong. They knew the art of living as they were contented with their lot. They were hospitable and men of simple faith. Next question. What are the unique traits of Garogalanian tribe? Answer. The Garogalanians were men of simple faith. They were contented with their guests with coffee and tobacco. They knew the art of living, which is the celebration of being alive. Though poor, they were famous for their trust and honesty. They were proud of their honesty. They believe in right and wrong. None of them could think of deceiving anybody in the world. Next question. Why did Aram find it hard to believe that Murad had stolen the horse? Answer. The narrator couldn't believe that his cousin Murad had stolen horse because they belonged to the Garogalanian tribe. The members of their tribe were famous for their honesty. They believed in right and wrong. None of them would deceive anybody in the world. Now, the next question. What two characters traits of Murad are hinted at by the narrator in the initial part of the story? Murad was considered crazy by everybody who knew him except the narrator. He was quite crazy about horses. Secondly, he enjoyed being alive more than anybody else. Next question. What does the narrator mean when he says that the distribution of various kinds of spirit of our tribe had been from the beginning capricious and vagrant? How does he illustrate his point? The narrator means to say that in their tribe a child does not necessarily inherit this spirit from his father. He illustrates his point by giving the example of his cousin Murad. Murad's father was practical, but Murad was considered to be crazy. He seemed to have inherited his craziness from their uncle Khosrow. Now next question for you. Describe the incident which confirms that the narrator's uncle Khosrow was indeed crazy. Answer. One day the narrator's uncle Khosrow was having his moustache trimmed at the barber shop. His son Arak could running to tell him their house was on fire. Khosrow roared, "It is no harm. Pay no attention to it." The barber repeated what the boy had said. Khosrow roared again, "Enough! It is no harm, I say." Next question. Give a short description of the narrator's uncle Khosrow. Answer. The narrator's uncle Khosrow was considered crazy. He was an enormous man. He had a powerful head with black hair. He had large moustache. He was a man of furious temper and irritable nature. He was so impatient that he would stop anyone from talking by shouting, "It is no harm. Pay no attention to it." Now next question. Give example to show why cousin Murad was considered as one of the craziest members of the narrator's family. Answer. Cousin Murad had a crazy streak. He was quite crazy about horses. He kept the stolen white horse for about 6 weeks, rode it, loved it, fed it well, and hid it in a deserted yard. When he sang in the open countryside, it seems as if he were roaring. Next question. It was true. Then he had stolen the horse. There was no question about it. He had come to invite me to ride or not, as I chose. However, did the narrator convince himself to enjoy a horse ride with cousin Murad? Answer. It seems to him that stealing a horse for a ride was not the same thing as stealing something else, such as money. Since he and Murad were quite crazy about horses, it wasn't thought to be stealing. He convinced himself with the thought that it would become stealing only when they offered to sell it. Describe the narrator's experience when he rode the white horse alone. The narrator had a frightful experience. Frightful means student कि fearful, डरना मतलब. When he rode the white horse alone, he leapt on the horse, on the back of the horse, but it did not move, as advised by Murad. He kicked into the muscles of the horse. It reared and snorted. ये reared means स्टूडेंट्स की ये अपनी पिछली जो टांगों पे खड़ा हो गया. It stand on its behind legs. It reared and snorted. और ये फिर हिन आया. Snorted means हिन आना, या फिर कह दो कि नी करना. Then it began to run. It ran down the road to a vineyard and began to leap over the vines. विनीयार्ड कहते हैं स्टूडेंट जहाँ पे ग्रेप्स वगैरह ग्रो होते हैं ना, वो उसे कहते हैं विनीयार्ड. एंड बिगिन टू लीप ओवर द वाइन्स. एज इट लीप्ड ओवर द सेवेंथ वाइन द नरेटर फेल ऑफ. द हॉर्स continued running. Brief account of Murad's joyride. Answer. Murad kicked his heels into the horse and shouted, "Wazir, run!" The horse stood on its hind legs, snorted and ran forward at full speed. Murad raced the horse across a field of dry grass to an irrigation ditch. He crossed the ditch on the horse. When he returned 5 minutes later, he was dripping wet. That means कि पसीना आ रहा था. He was dripping wet means पसीना था. 5 मिनट तक हॉर्स राइड करने के बाद एक्चुअली he was totally sweated. Sweated means होता है पसीना आना. पूरा पसीने से फेंक किया था वो. Why did Murad not look worried when the narrator asked where they would hide the horse? Answer. Murad had stolen the horse a month before. Since then, he had been enjoying early morning ride. Then he would hide the horse in the barn of a deserted vineyard. So he did not look worried when the narrator asked where they would hide the horse. Next question. Who was John Byro? What problem was he facing these days? Answer. John Byro was an Assyrian farmer. He was a regular visitor to the narrator's family. His white horse had been stolen the previous month. His सरी कहते हैं स्टूडेंट्स जो हॉर्स कार्ट होती है ना, हॉर्स कार्ट कहते हैं जो हॉर्स के जो पीछे गाड़ी लगती है ना, गाड़ी या जो एक है ना, उससे कहते हैं कि व्हीकल टाइप का जो हॉर्स पे लगाते हैं, तो उसे कहते हैं सरी. सरी वॉज ऑफ नो यूज विदाउट द हॉर्स. नाउ ही हैड टू वॉक ऑन फुट इफ ही वांटेड टू गो समवेयर. Why does the narrator mention Uncle Khosrow? Which characteristic features of the man are highlighted? Answer. Cousin Murad seemed to inherit the crazy streak of Uncle Khosrow. He was a big man with a powerful head of black hair and very large moustache. He was quite furious in his temper, very irritable and impatient. He would stop anyone from talking by roaring his phrase, "It is no harm, pay no attention to it." Now next question. How did Uncle Khosrow react to John Byro's complaint about the stealing of his horse? Answer. John Byro was sad that his white horse had been stolen last month and it was missing even then. Instead of showing any sympathy, Uncle Khosrow became very irritated and shouted, "It is no harm. What is the loss of a horse? What is this crying over a horse?" Now next question. How did Murad tend the young Robin with a hard wing? What aspect of his character is revealed in this incident? इसका मतलब ये हुआ स्टूडेंट, रॉबिन एक बर्ड होती है, वो कैसे उस बर्ड रॉबिन की रिपेयर, उसकी जो वो हर्ट हुई थी उसको किस तरह से वो ठीक कर रहा था. व्हाट एस्पेक्ट ऑफ हिज कैरेक्टर, इससे उसकी कैरेक्टर क्या पता चलता है मुराद की. मुराद नो आंसर. मुराद रिपेयर्ड द हर्ट विंग ऑफ द यंग रॉबिन. उसने जो है, जो हर्ट विंग है, जो एक पंख है उसका टूटा हुआ, उसको रिपेयर करने की कोशिश की, उसकी मरम्मत करने की कोशिश की. एंड थ्रू द बर्ड इनटू द एयर. उसने बर्ड को एयर में डाल दिया, उड़ा दिया. आफ्टर फ्यू सक्सेसफुल अटेम्प्ट्स द रॉबिन फ्लू अवे. और एक दो अटेम्प्ट्स के बाद रॉबिन जो है उड़ के चली गई, फ्लू अवे. दिस इंसिडेंट शोज दैट मुराद वाज अ ग्रेट लवर ऑफ बर्ड्स एंड एनिमल्स. इससे मालूम पड़ता है कि बहुत ग्रेट लवर था बर्ड्स और एनिमल्स का. ही वॉज अ काइंड हार्टेड बॉय. और बड़ा दयालु हृदय का बच्चा था. Now next question. How did the narrator know that his cousin Murad couldn't have bought the horse? Answer. The narrator knew that his cousin Murad couldn't have bought the horse as they were afflicted with poverty. It was difficult for them to provide themselves with 2 square meals. He wondered how Murad got the money to buy the horse. Student, 2 square meals होता है ऑफ द डे, मीन्स होता है कि 2 स्क्वायर मील्स ऑफ द डे, यानी कि पूरा भरपेट खाना भी नहीं मिल पाता, 2 वक्त का खाना भी प्रॉपर तरीके से नहीं मिल पाता उनको. What a distinction. Next question. What distinction does the narrator make between stealing a horse for a ride and stealing money? Answer. According to narrator, stealing a horse for a ride was something different from stealing money. If you were crazy about horses, it was not stealing at all. It would amount to stealing only if you intended to sell the horses. Now next question. What do you think induced the boys to return the horse to its owner? Answer. One morning on the way to the deserted vineyard where they used to hide the horse, the boys ran into the farmer John Byro's He recognized his horse, but it was difficult for him to believe that the boys could have stolen his horse because their family was well known for honesty. So he went away saying that the horse must be the twin of his horse. The boys knew that he had become suspicious. So the time had come to return the horse to its true owner. Now next question. How do you think had Murad developed an understanding with the horse, and what was the result? Murad had been quite tender and affectionate towards the horse. He was put his arms around it, press his nose into the horse's nose, and pat it. Pat means thapki dena. It was not easy to tame someone else's horse and get it to behave nicely. At first, he wanted to run wild. Gradually, Murad was able to control the horse and do what he wanted. Even John Byro, the rightful owner, admitted that the horse had become better tempered and stronger than ever. Now, next question. Why did narrator insist on keeping the stolen horse for a year? Why did Murad oppose the idea? Answer. The narrator didn't want to give the horse back to its owner until he learned to ride. Murad said that it would take him a year to learn to ride. The narrator insisted on keeping the horse for a year, But Murad insisted that the horse must go back to its original owner. He did not want that a member of the Garogulinian family should be accused of stealing. Now, next question. Murad was a kind-hearted young boy who was emphatic to in nature. Mention two instances to justify above statement. Answer. Two instances of Murad's kind-heartedness. First, he did not allow Aram to ride the horse alone because Aram did not know about the horse's movement. Second, Murad knew how to treat animals with compassion, so he could train John Byro's horse. Next question. Describe the narrator's experience of early morning ride with his cousin Murad. Answer. It was summer. Early one morning, the narrator's cousin Murad came to his house. He was sitting on a beautiful white horse. He invited the narrator to enjoy a ride. The narrator got ready and leapt on to the horse behind Murad. In less than 3 minutes, they were in the open. The horse began to snort. They let the horse run as long as it felt like running. Then Murad asked the narrator to get down as he wanted to ride alone. The narrator agreed on the condition that Murad would let him also try to ride alone. Murad kicked his heels into the horse. The horse stood on its hind legs, snorted and began to run. Murad made the horse run across a field of dry grasses to an irrigation ditch. He crossed the ditch on the horse. 5 minutes later he returned. Now it was the narrator's turn to ride alone. When he got in onto the back of the horse, it ran down the road to a vineyard instead of running across the field to the irrigation ditch. It began to leap over vines. It had hardly leaped over 7 vines when the narrator fell off. The horse kept running and then disappeared. It took Murad half an hour to trace the horse and bring it back. Now, next question. How did the narrator reach the conclusion that his cousin Murad had stolen the horse? Why did he refuse to believe that Murad could be a thief? Now, answer. One summer morning, the narrator's cousin Murad came to his house. He was riding a beautiful white horse. The narrator wondered how Murad managed to get the horse. They were living in poverty. They didn't have enough money to provide themselves with 2 square meals. दो वक्त का खाना ना जूता पाना, that is called 2 square meals. So there was no question of Murad's having money to buy the horse. If he could not have brought the horse, he must have stolen it. When the narrator asked him, instead of giving any reply, Murad invited him to ride. The narrator concluded that Murad had stolen the horse, but he refused to believe that Murad could be a thief. In the first place, their tribe was famous for honesty, and no member of their family could be a thief. Then the narrator believed that stealing a horse for a ride was not stealing at all. It amounted to stealing only when you offered to sell the horse, which he knew Murad would never do so the narrator believed that Murad was not a thief, though he had stolen the horse. Now, next question. Comment on the role of Aram, the narrator, in the story. Answer. Aram in the story, the summer of the beautiful white horse, being the narrator, plays the role of a commentator also. He not only narrates the various adventures, incidents and actions, but also provides useful information regarding the Main characters and their behavior. He seemed to be the fulcrum on which the whole story rests. He gives a graphic description of the Garogulanian tribe, its members, their traits and economic features. Murad, Murad and Uncle Khosrow represent the crazy streak in the tribe. Abject poverty of the family does not diminish his pride in his family, which is famous for honesty. He says no member of the Garogulanian family could be a thief. He makes a fine distinction between stealing a horse for a ride and stealing a horse to sell it off. He gives a fine description of the horse ride and countryside with its vineyard, orchards, irrigation ditches, and country roads. Now, next question. Compare and contrast Uncle Khosrow and cousin Murad. Answer. Uncle Khosrow and cousin Murad have one very common point in common, their craziness. Murad was considered the natural descendant of Uncle Khosrow in this respect. They both are dominating in nature. Both use pet words and phrase and roar aloud to question the hearer. While Uncle Khosrow says, "It is no harm, pay no attention to it," Murad boasts, I have a way with birds, dogs, farmers." Khosrow shouts at his son Aram, the barber, and farmer John Bairo. The narrator is a patient listener to Murad's assertions. They are different in their age and physical build-up. Uncle Khosrow, a middle-aged person, is an enormous man with a powerful head of black hair and very large mustache. Murad is an athletic young chap of 13. Khosrow is irritable, impatient, and furious in temper. Murad is reasonable in conversation. Now, next question. Narrate the story, The Summer of the Beautiful White Horse, in your own words. Now, answer. One summer morning, Aram's cousin Murad came to his house. He woke him up by tapping on the window of his room. The narrator was surprised to see Murad sitting on a beautiful white horse. Murad asked him to quit if he wanted to ride. The narrator longed to ride and jumped down to the yard from the window and leaped onto the horse behind his cousin Murad. As these families were poor, Aram concluded that Murad must have stolen the horse. They rode and Murad sang and enjoyed their ride in the fresh morning. Murad had a joy ride alone. It seemed he had a way with a horse, for when Aram tried to ride alone, the horse threw him off and ran away. It was a broad daylight and Murad hid the horse in the barn of a deserted vineyard. That afternoon, John Bairo, the farmer, visited Aram's house and related his plight. His white horse had been missing for a month. Uncle Khosrow silenced him with his roaring comments. Aram reported everything to Murad and requested him to keep the horse till he learned to ride. Murad did not agree. After a fortnight, they met with farmer John Bairo and decided to return the horse. John Bairo had believed the boys as he knew their fathers and was fully aware about the fame of their family for honesty. Murad returned the horse to its owner the next morning. So students, in this way, there are many other questions, and these questions are like the previous questions. So now I will read the last question. What impression do you form of cousin Murad? Now answer. Murad was a young boy of 13. He belonged to the Garogalian family of Armenia. Their whole tribe was poverty stricken. In spite of abject poverty, their family was famous for honesty. Murad was a quite adventurous and had a crazy streak in him. He enjoyed being alive more than anybody else. Murad loved horse riding. He had a way with a horse. He had tamed the horse by his affectionate behavior, and the horse was no longer wild. It obeyed Murad faithfully. He loved for the horse was evident in the last scene. While parting, he put his arms around the horse and patted it. He also had a way with dogs. The dogs of John Barrow followed him around without making a sound. He was kind too. He treated a young robin which had hurt its wing. He was proud of his family for honesty. So student, thank you very much for listening and watching this video, and I will please keep on watching or happy learning.